He once called his wife a boring nobody, then left her for a girl who made his life feel lit up. But now, with everything falling apart, he comes crawling back, begging for forgiveness, only to realize she's no longer a puppet in his little show. Want to know what that woman did when she came face to face with the man who once threw her away? Stick around for this emotional, twist-filled story. They met in a modern American history class during their senior year of college. Charlotte sat in the front row, always taking notes. Derek sat in the back, usually late, always holding a coffee twice the size of the textbook. She thought he was kind of lazy. He called her the library girl. And yet, somehow, they ended up together. They got married right after turning 26. A small, simple ceremony under the old oak trees at Zilker Park, with just a few close friends and some family. No frills, not overly romantic, but just enough to make them both believe they were doing the right thing. Charlotte worked as a librarian at the university library. She loved the smell of old paper, the sound of pages turning, and the way sunlight poured through the third-floor windows in the morning. Derek, at the time, was trying to build his own software company. His office was the living room of their rented South Austin apartment, and his desk was an old dining table they'd bought off Craigslist. But they were happy, genuinely happy. Life back then wasn't glamorous. Dinner was spaghetti 3 nights a week. Saturdays were for the farmer's market. Sundays meant doing laundry together at the laundromat down the street. In the summer, they planted herbs on the front porch. In the winter, they read books by the electric heater. Nothing fancy, but nothing missing either. They'd often sit in silence, each with a book, occasionally nudging their feet together under the table. Everything felt easy, like breathing. Charlotte was never the spotlight type. She was fine being the background in someone else's life. Tending plants, cooking, making tea, choosing warm lights over white ones, she lived in the details. Derek used to love that. He once said, "You're the piece I never knew I needed." But then his company landed some funding. A seed round from a California investment group. Just a few $100,000, but enough for Derek to get his own office, hire a small team, buy some fancy dress shirts, and change. At first, it was just meetups downtown. Networking, building connections. Charlotte understood, so she didn't complain when he started coming home late. But then it became a routine. Then it turned into distance. Late nights became no heads-up at all. Dinner together turned into a cold takeout box left on the table. Hugs after long days faded into a blank nod as he walked into the room. One night, Derek said, "You should get out more. My friends keep asking why my wife never shows up." Charlotte pressed her lips together. "I'm not great with crowds. You know that." "Then learn. You keep living like this. Who even knows what you want anymore?" he said with a half smirk, turning back to his laptop. She started to change. Just a little. She learned to cook the things he liked: spicy ginger Thai rice, onion-free pasta, even the crispy sweet potato fritters he once mentioned when he was drunk. She tried softer perfumes, chose dresses over oversized sweaters. She invited his friends over for dinner, even though none of them remembered her name by the third visit. But no one said thank you. Not a single word. One night, Derek was having drinks with a few new friends, people Charlotte had never met. She walked into the living room, smiling as she carried in a tray of food. "This is Charlotte, my wife," Derek said, then laughed, turning to the group. "She's like a closed book. No one knows what's inside, and no one really has time to read it." The whole table laughed. She laughed too, but her heart hit the tile floor. After that night, she stopped cooking, stopped wearing makeup, stopped asking about his schedule, stopped inviting his friends over. Every effort she'd made to become someone else felt like a joke. Charlotte felt like a shadow, standing beside his life, without a voice. Everything she used to be, quietly erased from her own story. One early autumn night when the Austin air started to turn crisp, Derek didn't come home again. She didn't text, didn't call. She just grabbed a blanket and sat out on the balcony. No book, no light, no music, just her and the dark. The wind slipped through her hair, carrying the smell of freshly cut grass. She didn't cry. She wasn't angry. Just empty. That night, for the first time in years, Charlotte stayed up all night. Not out of worry, but because for the first time, she began to ask herself, who am I living for? Change didn't come in some big, dramatic moment. It started in the small things, like how Derek began wearing a different cologne. Not the old sandalwood scent Charlotte had picked for him, but something sharper, flashier, the kind that lingered on shirts and car seats. He said it was from a new coworker who overdoes it a bit. Charlotte nodded, didn't ask. Then came the company parties she wasn't invited to. The excuse was always the same, just for the team. She used to believe him, until one night, Madison, Charlotte's best friend, sent her a photo. No caption, just the image. Derek, standing in the middle of a hotel courtyard, arm wrapped around the waist of a woman with loose brown curls and a tight red dress. The lights hit their faces like the world had shrunk down to just the two of them. Charlotte didn't react right away. She sat still on the couch, the glow from her phone screen making the room feel even darker. After a while, she got up, walked to the bedroom, and quietly opened Derek's drawer. His wallet, his watch, and a business card that slipped out. Ava Mathers, creative strategy consultant. She unlocked his phone. He'd given her the passcode ages ago, probably hadn't changed it. The first message on the screen was from Ava. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you tonight. Charlotte didn't read the rest. She just put everything back where it was, turned off the bedroom light, and sat in the kitchen. The next morning, she didn't wait for him to come home. She went to work like normal. That night, Derek walked in close to 11, tie loose, 2 buttons undone on his shirt. "You're still up?" he said, like nothing had happened. "Do you love her?" Charlotte's voice wasn't loud, wasn't shaky, just a question that needed an answer. Derek stood there for a few seconds, then let out a breath. "It's not about love, it's about inspiration. You get that, right? I need someone who makes me feel alive. You're good, you're safe, but I feel like I'm sinking." She didn't say a word, just stood up, grabbed a glass of water, took a sip. The way she moved, so calm it was almost chilling, made Derek uncomfortable. He scratched his head and added, "I wasn't trying to hide it from you. It's just, Ava's different. She doesn't judge me for the crazy dreams I have. She's bold, full of life. That's what I need." After that, everything moved fast, like Derek had planned it all along. He started sleeping at the office, blaming it on a big project. When Charlotte texted saying she'd cook dinner, he replied, "Don't worry about me. Grabbing food with the team tonight." A week later, he left an envelope on the dining table. Inside was a divorce agreement, names printed, all the details filled out. No letter, no explanation. Charlotte read through the papers, folded them neatly, and placed them back where they were. Then she walked into the kitchen, turned on the stove to boil water, and sat down at the table. The warm yellow light spilled across the empty wall in front of her. She stared at a small crack in the paint, and kept staring. For 3 hours, no tears. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't break anything. It was like someone had turned off the sound inside her. She didn't feel pain, didn't feel anger, just an emptiness, like someone had hollowed out her core and left behind a shell that could still walk, still breathe, but couldn't feel. A week later, early Sunday morning, Charlotte packed her things. Not much, just a few outfits, books, notebooks, and some personal items. She texted her aunt in Vermont, "Can I stay with you for a few months?" That was all. Her aunt replied in less than 10 minutes, "Always." Charlotte left the apartment key on the table next to the divorce papers. She didn't write a note. She just placed a small cactus, the only thing Derek ever called cute back when they first got married, right beside them. Then, she wheeled her suitcase out of the apartment. That afternoon, Derek sent one text. "I hope you find yourself. You deserve peace." Charlotte didn't reply. The sky darkened as she drove across states. The highway was quiet, just the sound of tires on pavement and the wind rushing past. The radio played a song they used to listen to all the time when they first got married, a soundtrack to a memory she thought had already died. She reached out and turned it off. No more looking back, no more holding on. That night, she kept driving, through the dark, through everything that had once held her down. No stops. No glances in the rearview mirror. By morning, Charlotte pulled over on the edge of a dirt road, in front of a small blue-gray wooden house with white daisies growing along the steps. Her aunt stood at the door, arms folded, not saying a word, just opening them wide for a tight hug as Charlotte stepped out of the car. The whole morning passed without any big conversations, just the whistle of a kettle, the warm smell of baked goods in the oven, and quiet glances long enough to say everything had changed. Late autumn in Vermont was almost silent. The wind moved slower. People did too. It took Charlotte 2 days to sleep again. Deep sleep, no dreams, no jolts awake. On the third day, her aunt mentioned that the little bookshop in town was looking for part-time help. Charlotte didn't need to think twice. The bookshop sat next to a bakery. It wasn't big, just 2 rooms, but it was tidy, and it smelled like new paper mixed with wood. The owner, a woman in her 50s with wispy silver hair, asked one question. "Do you know how to organize?" Charlotte nodded and started that very afternoon. On her first morning opening the shop, she saw Eli. He was setting a tray of baked goods on the wooden stand outside his place. A small bakery with a faded sign that read, "Maple and Rye." He didn't say anything when he saw her, just nodded. She nodded back. Neither of them tried to fill the silence, and honestly, it didn't feel strange. Eli was the kind of person who didn't join a conversation unless invited. Widowed 3 years, owned the bakery for nearly 10. Quiet, measured, and the sort who looked at people like he was fitting their silences together before deciding what to say. In the mornings that followed, they started seeing each other more often. Not because they tried, but because life here was simple enough that everyone became part of each other's rhythm. Charlotte would open the bookshop at 7:30, flip on the lights, and start rearranging books. Eli would pass by at 7:45, a dish towel slung over his shoulder, carrying the first tray of still warm pastries. She'd say, "Good morning." He'd say, "Morning's good." Some days, no one said anything, but it never felt awkward. It just felt quiet. One morning, as she struggled with the shop's old coffee machine for the 3rd day in a row, Eli walked in with a hot cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and set it on the table. "I've been watching you fight that thing for 3 days, he said, then turned and walked out. Charlotte barely managed a quick thanks after him. From that day on, the coffee just showed up. Every morning. Eli wasn't handsome in a way that turned heads, but there was something about him that made it easy to breathe when he was around. Charlotte didn't have to say the right thing or smile at the right time. She didn't have to explain why she didn't like loud places or why she hated questions like, "Are you okay?" Eli didn't ask, but somehow she still felt heard. One rainy afternoon, her shop sprang a leak. Eli came over to check on it, hammer and waterproof tape in hand. While he patched it up, Charlotte fussed over a stack of damp books. "You bake," she said. "I don't know how to do anything except read and label things." He looked up and gave a small smile. Then learned to bake. The following week, she started coming to Eli's bakery in the afternoons after closing the bookshop. She learned to make almond cookies, not to master it, just to fill time she didn't yet know what to do with. She burned the first batch, spilled flour on the floor, overbeat the eggs. Eli didn't laugh. He just handed her a towel. "Don't worry. Burnt cookies are a good sign. Means next time will be better." A few weeks later, she started a weekend story hour for kids at the shop. The local kids came and sat in a circle, eyes lighting up when she used different voices for each character. One of them said, "You tell stories better than TV." Charlotte smiled. It had been a long time since she felt useful. One Thursday evening, Eli asked if she wanted to have dinner. Not in a way that felt like asking her out, just a simple question, like asking about the weather. She nodded. They had seafood pasta, the simplest dish on his menu. Sat outside behind the bakery, under warm string lights. No one talked much. No one stared too hard. It wasn't a date, just 2 people having dinner. But no one was in a hurry. After that night, Charlotte found herself smiling more easily, not to make anyone feel better, just because things felt a little lighter. She watched people pass by without wondering what they thought of her. She could sit in silence without feeling invisible. One night, after closing the bookshop late, she caught a glimpse of herself in the glass door. Shirt dusted with flour, hair messy, hands still smelling like cookies. She stood there for a moment. The light from outside caught her eyes. Not sparkling, but not empty either. She was still herself, just no longer hollow. Early winter in Vermont, no snow yet, but the wind had sharpened. Charlotte was restocking the shelf near the front window when a black SUV pulled up outside the shop. She glanced out, then froze. The man who stepped out needed no introduction. Derek. He stood there for a moment, hands in his coat pockets, then walked in. No clear reason, no appointment, but his eyes said he had one. "I'm in town for work, had something nearby," he said, eyes drifting around the shop like he was trying to remember something familiar. "Thought I'd stop by, see how you're doing." Charlotte didn't ask anything, just nodded and turned back to the books. Derek lingered for a moment, then left, leaving behind a silence that hadn't quite settled. 3 days later, a bouquet of flowers arrived at the shop. She didn't accept it. The delivery guy took it back. The next day, Derek showed up again. Same excuse, just happened to be nearby. She was polite, responded just enough, then went right back to work. Eli saw Derek for the first time on a Friday afternoon. He was nailing a wooden sign back onto the bakery's doorframe when he noticed the unfamiliar man walk into the bookshop. When Derek walked out, Eli asked just one question. "Someone from the past?" Charlotte didn't even turn her head. "A part of myself no one wants to remember." The more she ignored him, the more Derek showed up. Each time his face looked different. Less confident, less smug. One late afternoon, while Charlotte was sorting a stack of returned book slips, Derek walked up and, for the first time, dropped the act. "I lost my job," he began. "My company, we lost major funding. They downsized. I was one of the first to go." Charlotte kept labeling books. Didn't look up. Then Ava left. Actually moved out completely. Said I was aimless. Said I lacked direction. Said I'd run out of ideas. Can you believe that? The same person who once called me her inspiration now calls me dead weight. "Sounds rough," Charlotte said, voice steady. No sarcasm, no bite. Derek exhaled and sat down in the chair across from her. She always needed someone to admire her. If I wasn't on top, she lost interest. It was all surface, clothes, looks, the guys around her. I thought I needed someone like that. Charlotte closed her notebook and looked up for the first time. "And then you remembered me?" "I remembered. Peace. The feeling of being with someone without putting on a show. I've never felt that again, Charlotte." This time she looked him straight in the eyes, not to find an answer, just to see if he still saw anything in her. "Aren't you angry?" he asked, almost confused. I did." "No," she cut him off. "There's no reason to be angry anymore. You're not important enough for that." In the days that followed, Derek kept showing up. Every time, Eli was there too. Not interfering, just standing nearby, like a living boundary. One Wednesday evening, Derek waited for her outside the shop. The wind whipped through his thin jacket, but he didn't move. "I want to talk, just the two of us," he said, with Eli standing nearby. Charlotte glanced at Eli. "You should head home. I can lock up." Eli looked at her for a moment, then nodded. No words needed. Derek waited until the shop door was fully closed. "I've lost everything. Job, friends, Ava. You're the only thing that still feels real. You were always the one who was truly there." "For what?" she asked. "To start over. I'm different now, Charlotte. I've figured things out." She nodded, eyes following the mist gathering on the glass. He stepped forward, reaching for her shoulder. Charlotte stepped back, just one step, gentle, but enough. "Don't. I'm just sorry." "No need. I forgave you long ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back." Derek fell silent. His lips moved like he wanted to say more, but she cut him off. "I'm no longer the person you can read like an old book." That stopped him cold, clear as day, eyes wide open. He had called her that once, seeing her as something too easy to understand, too boring. Now those words came back, shutting down everything he meant to do. Charlotte turned, opened the door, and stepped inside. The door closed quietly behind her. No slam. Just the wind whispering through the wooden frame. Derek stayed there, in the cold wind, nothing left to say, no one left to hold on to. After that moment, Derek stopped showing up as a man pretending to be strong. He began acting like a drowning man, clinging to anything floating, even if it was a hard, jagged ledge. It started with folded notes slipped under the bookstore door every early morning. Repeated apologies, ink blurred by dew. Some days, postcards of Zilker Park, the place where they'd taken their wedding photos. Then longer letters arrived by mail, no envelopes, like they wanted anyone to read them if needed. He even called Charlotte's aunt, saying, "Your niece was the only one ever real with me." Her aunt told Charlotte with a mix of amusement and annoyance, "He thinks I'm some kind of mediator when he's the one who made you leave." Charlotte said nothing. Derek didn't stop. He sought out neighbors, telling them about a deep love that never ended. Some people avoided him. Others messaged Charlotte, saying he looked unwell. An old lady living next to the bookshop told Charlotte, "He's like a sleepwalker. Wanders every night. Pitiful, but deserved." One Friday afternoon, as Charlotte was dusting flour over a tray of cookies to take to Eli for a taste test, there was a sharp knock at the door. She stepped outside, hands still covered in flour, apron stained with vanilla and cinnamon, and saw Derek kneeling on the stone patio in front of the shop. The wind swept through his shirt, barely enough to keep him warm. He looked like he'd been there longer than usual. "I'll make it right," his voice nearly breaking. "Just give me one chance." "One chance, Charlotte?" She wasn't surprised. She didn't rush out. Just opened the door enough for the light inside the shop to spill out and reveal the look on his face. "You once said," Derek continued, eyes lifting, "if I tried, you'd stay. Back in Austin when I was starting out. You said that, remember?" Charlotte didn't answer right away. She looked down at her flour-covered hands, then gently peeled a bit of dough from her ring finger, took a deep breath, and looked up. "I kept my promise," she said softly, "but you didn't." Derek bowed his head, shoulders trembling. No more walls, no image, no pride. He broke down, crying like a man who just realized every door had closed long ago, and only he thought there was still a way in. "I have nothing left," he said, voice shattered. "Job, friends, Ava? No one's there anymore. Everything I thought was real is just smoke now. The memory of you is the only thing that's real." Charlotte stepped forward a little, standing a few feet away, close enough to hear clearly, but her eyes didn't waver. Her voice held no tremor. "I don't live on someone else's memories." Her words fell heavy and cold, colder than the winter wind. At that moment, Eli appeared. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions, didn't look at Derek. He simply stepped close to Charlotte, resting a hand gently and firmly on her back. She didn't turn around, but her whole body exhaled, like someone was helping her find balance without a single word. Derek looked up, saw the scene, and said nothing more. His lips pressed tight, eyes empty. Charlotte gave him one last look. No anger, no triumph, no satisfaction. Just a look like placing a period, soft, clear, and final. She turned and stepped inside. Eli walked beside her. No one spoke. No one needed to. The door closed behind them, no loud sound. But this time, it wasn't just a closing door. It was the last one. With Derek outside and a new life that no longer included him. Derek left town 3 weeks after his quiet return, just as silently as he had appeared. No goodbyes, no warnings. Just one final message sent early one morning. "I'm sorry. You deserve more than I ever was." Charlotte didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because she knew there was nothing left to mend. One apology couldn't fill the void of the years she'd silently endured. She didn't tell anyone about it. Never mentioned Derek to Eli, her aunt, or customers in the bookstore. No one asked, and even if they had, she would have just smiled. There was nothing to tell. She didn't need anyone's pity, nor praise for getting through it. Everything she did was for herself, not for recognition. Charlotte's first winter in Vermont passed slowly. The wind was still cold, the snow still deep, but nothing made her feel lonely. She and Eli hosted a small book club every Saturday. The town's kids eagerly brought their own short stories to read aloud. Some stumbled over words, some misread lines, but everyone clapped. No one laughed at anyone. No one compared. Just a room full of stories and listening. One little girl, curly hair, freckles, about 8 years old, stayed after story time and quietly asked Charlotte, "Have you ever been sad?" Charlotte paused, then nodded without hesitation. "Yes, but sadness isn't the end." She wasn't sure the girl fully understood, but the girl nodded hard, as if she understood just enough. On weekends, Charlotte and Eli often took walks together in the woods. No one led the way. They simply walked side by side, matching steps. No rush, no destination. Sometimes they'd stop just to listen to the crunch of dry leaves beneath their feet. Sometimes Eli would sit on a stone by the stream, open the box of cookies she'd made, and they'd eat in silence, eyes meeting without needing to say a thing. Once, as Eli sliced an apple with a small knife, Charlotte looked at him and laughed. Not because of anything special, just a gentle wave of relief washing over her. For the first time, she laughed without trying to soothe anyone else. In that moment, she saw no shadows of anyone coming between them. No ghosts of the past. Just the present, clear and enough. Charlotte didn't seek revenge. She didn't think about taking anything back from Derek. She didn't try to prove she was better or stronger. She simply refused to let anything left from the past tie her down. Not to win over anyone, but to never be forced to look back every time she faced the mirror. One late March evening, she sat alone in the shop after closing, opened her laptop, and rewrote her plan to open her own bookstore. Nothing grand. No daydreams. Just a small space, big enough for a few shelves, some chairs, and a handful of reluctant readers. She didn't need anyone to admire it. She just needed it to be hers, close enough to what she wanted to hold on to. As she turned off the lights, she passed by the large front window. Her reflection stared back, hair tied hastily, worn t-shirt, eyes looking straight ahead. This time, those eyes weren't searching for anyone. The woman who had once been left behind was now choosing herself. Charlotte's story isn't about revenge or winning back a place in someone's heart. It's the journey of a woman once underestimated, once abandoned, choosing to rise, not to prove anything to anyone, but to live a life that asks for no one's approval. Sometimes, the greatest peace isn't having someone beside you. It's knowing exactly who you are and refusing to let anyone else define it. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt yourself shrinking, fading, just to hold on to the other person? Have you ever walked away? And if so, what helped you stand strong? Share your story below, because maybe someone out there needs the answer you once found. If you think these stories are worth hearing, hit subscribe to Love Stories so you don't miss real slices of love, pain, and the strength we all deserve to reach.